I'm going to go ahead and go live on YouTube here so that we can just get straight into it and go from there.
So Becky, are you in the UK?
I am, yes, John.
Very good.
I haven't escaped anywhere sunny yet.
Another one of these world travelers.
Yeah, I think I've done enough traveling this year, John.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't want to limit you.
I think I need to limit myself.
Okay. Right. Okay, so I say we'll just get straight into it, I think. It's a very sort of a quiet morning this morning seems to be. I don't know if it's people getting back into their normal quiet, as in the pace of business. I think this last 2 days has been sort of interesting. I think people are more and more back into a little bit of routine of what it was like sort of pre-lockdown. I don't know if you're experiencing that back here or not in the business world, but people do seem to be back to almost what it was like before.
Yeah, I've not really noticed that much difference, to be honest. I'm still talking to a lot of people.
Yeah, I would probably be more aligned with Becky that it may be a local thing you're seeing, David.
It may be, maybe just I was in Belfast yesterday, and certainly the traffic, just the general what do you call it? Just the general atmosphere was sort of very much sort of similar. People still wearing masks, but other than that, things just very much seemed quite normal. Maybe that was just because I was out and about for the first time. So anyway, we're now.
I think that's, this is one of the classic things, and it really relates to our topic of real estate, that you have to be careful. You're observing things, and is it you and how you see them, or is it how they are? And particularly if you're trying to leap forward and you're thinking about what the future might hold, the observer can actually be the bigger variable.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. It's a very fair point. And people are coming out sort of back into business at different stages too, which obviously affects their perception of the market. So, okay, well, listen, good morning, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining us once again for our 30-minute weekly broadcast, as we call it. These are designed to be 30 minutes, market update, a little bit about what's happening in the world of property crowdfunding, and always a special guest, someone who can provide an insight of what we call real life, someone at the coalface, someone out there in the market, and it provides a valuable take or insight or perception on what's actually happening. So good morning to Becky Brignall, who's joining us today.
Morning, thank you.
Fantastic to have you on board. So for those that don't know me, David Johnson, CEO of LEOcrowdfunding, equity property crowdfunding platform, and my resident co-host, Mr. John Corey. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, John Corey, long-term landlord, tech guy, and founder of Property Fortress.
Excellent. So we're going to get straight into it. We're bringing Becky, you straight in at the start, and then you can get involved in the market discussion. So again, brilliant to have you on board, Becky, and we'll be talking about your Caribbean escapades, I think, later on in the presentation. I'm looking forward to commenting on that. But first and foremost, who is Becky Brignall? What's your background? And of course, what do you do in property?
Yeah, hi there. Thanks, everyone. So I've been a project manager and program manager for the whole of my career. So I think that's a little bit unusual. I think people normally fall into that role, but I've always known I wanted to be a project manager. In the property space, I actually refer to myself as the program manager or the developer. So to differentiate between the construction project manager. So I'm overseeing the whole program, from finding the sites all the way through to the rental of the properties at the end. So I decided to transition into property 4 years ago. So whilst I was training and doing courses and mentorships, I invested my money with 3 developers. So I'm still an active angel investor now. So I source and work on development projects, ground up development projects and conversion projects within a 2-hour drive of my home in Waltham Cross, Hertfordshire.
Excellent. Now, I come from a marketing background initially, Becky, before I got into property. And a question that I always love to ask people is, especially when the name of their company is a little bit different and out there. So Smiling Properties. It did make me smile the first time I saw that a few months ago. So how did you arrive at that as a name for your company, or what was the motivation behind it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I get a very good positive response every time I say my company name. So it probably took about 3 or 4 months for me to choose a name. I was very keen on having a positive affirmation. So something that really invokes like good positive feelings. So when I sort of was playing around with Smiling Properties, I knew pretty much instantly that that was going to be my company name. And I think it represents me as well a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Well, you managed to get a smile off John on that, and given it's probably 5 a.m. over in America, that's a good achievement. So absolutely brilliant, and yeah, I love it, absolutely love it. So market update, just a couple of quick things regarding sort of news in the market, and then we'll get straight into your case study, Becky. So first thing is Welsh Government unveiling plans to provide grant schemes to help people struggling to pay their rent. And I thought this was interesting, really just in the sense that it's yet another artificial prop into the market. It's like a short-term boost in the arm, may help in the short term, but again, are we just loading all this expense of the short-term fixes? So I don't know if Becky or John have an observation or a comment on this development.
So go ahead,
John.
Becky.
Shall I go, John?
Yeah.
To be honest, I think I'm going to pass on commenting on this. I've specifically made a decision that I'm only going to focus on opportunities close to me. So for the reason that I don't want to have to be learning and keeping on top of a whole new set of changing rules. So I'm going to pass straight over to John.
Yeah, that's cool. And I like that, because it's very decisive that you know what you want to focus on. You're not going to let yourself get distracted by a bunch of other things.
Yep.
David, this is a Welsh thing. What Wales needs may be appropriate for something like this, or maybe not. It may be just this is how we win over voters, or it could be this is the right thing to do for people. You're loading the government up with more costs, fine. Taxpayers will pay for that. It's protecting landlords, it's protecting the tenants. I don't know that it props up the housing market per se, because I'm not sure there are that many landlords looking to buy and sell, and that this will be an influencing factor. But these are uncertain times, or different times, or all kinds of things are happening out there. So, but I do like Becky's focus on pick what it is you want to focus on, stick to that, don't get distracted by the noise, and be aware that other people are talking about things like this, and therefore that might affect how they think, but not you.
Yeah, it's so tempting, because I see retail and commercial opportunities all the time in Wales, and they look great, but I have to really have a word with myself and say, no, move on to the next opportunity.
Yeah. I like that. I like it. That's a good mindset to have for sure. So the second thing then is, and again, I should have said at the start, if anyone's any comments or questions, then please put them into the Q&A. We always encourage input from our attendees. Particularly, we know that many of them are professionals in the world of property in their own right, and have very valuable insights. So John and I can keep an eye on those, and where they're relevant, we can bring them in. So don't use the chat box, use the Q&A, and participate as much as possible. So the second sort of comments really surround stamp duty. The holidays due to end. The end of June, effectively.
Well, it ended. So,
as in yesterday, right enough. We're now 1st of July, the very famous 1st of July. So it's now ended. Now it is going to be phased. It's not like fall off end of a cliff. There's a phased sort of return over the next sort of 3 months, where so it won't just be like it's gone. But at the same time, interestingly, was the property auctions. So Stratton's had talked about how they're hopeful for like an increased appetite now that stamp duty holiday has ended. And I just, again, thought that was quite interesting, that as we've talked about before, John, where whenever change happens in the market, it can have a negative impact on some people in the world of property, but often it actually then has a positive impact on others. It just depends on what part of the property market you're involved in. So it'll be interesting to see if the auctions note an increase following the stamp duty holiday end.
I was reading an article and they were referring to stamp duty, but it was written from a more international perspective. And they said almost no countries in the world have stamp duty, or very few, and particularly when it comes to holidays. And we're seeing massive increase in sale prices around the world in many, many countries. So this conversation about stamp duty in the UK is highly relevant to the people having it, yet the underlying trends that seem to be uplifting real estate prices around the world for residential housing don't seem to correlate to stamp duty. So how much we will see any real change in the UK market is to be seen.
Yeah. Becky, I don't know, in terms of your sort of daily keep an eye on the market, I know you are very focused, but is the auction market something you're kind of aware of, and what's your view on sort of the appetite currently for auctions and how that might change in the future?
Yeah, I do actively look in auctions, and I have been a lot over the last 6 months or so, because I've sold the development that we're going to talk about. So I'm ready to reinvest. So I've very actively been searching in the auction market. It has been crazy. Just as an example, I was preparing to bid on an office that was, I think our max bid was 450, and it sold for 690, something like that. So it went crazy over, and we just can't see at all how that developer is going to be able to achieve that. So I look forward to that going through. So I think there's, so I'm also bidding on sort of normal traditional family homes to turn into HMOs. So I'm hoping that has also been very competitive. So I'm hoping that will start to slow down with regards to these stamp duty changes. But I imagine the developer focused properties like the commercials and the retails that I'm looking at will probably stay strong for a long time, because I think there's a lot of money flying around.
Yeah, okay. Yep, okay. Thanks for that. We did have a comment regarding Wales putting in the help for rent. So one of the attendees was saying, well done, Wales. And maybe it's something that can come into the UK. So, I mean, I think it definitely has a help in terms of people who are struggling with their rent, you know, because maybe they've lost a job or because of the situation with COVID. So it's certainly commendable from a social point of view, you know, that governments try and help out in that scenario. I suppose the pure mathematical financials is like a non-emotional conversation, and the effect it then has on future generations is almost secondary. But it's certainly good to see governments, devolved governments, trying to help out where there clearly may be a problem. So that's a good point. Okay, let's get straight in then to your case study. So I'll remind people this case study is now on our platform. And so you can actually go to a platform, click on the case study and see this in much more detail. But this is like an overview, Becky, just to give you an opportunity to talk about the high level of this one. And this is very much a learn from your journey. You know, we love education on our platform. These Thursday mornings, one of the big driver again is educational. I know we're in for sort of a really interesting sort of 15 minutes here as you talk through your journey, and there'll be valuable lessons for anyone who's involved in property investment from your journey here, which is great. So listen, over to you to talk us through this sort of project in terms of how you found it and how it went.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, the main focus will be on the lessons learned. As I touched on at the beginning, this was my first solo development project. So I spent the first couple of years doing the courses and mentorships and training, which I'm still actively doing now. And then I felt that I was ready to purchase my first development. I liked this project because it had two elements to it. So the 3-bed detached house that you can see in the picture needed a full refurb and an extension is what I chose to do. But it it was two titles. So you've got the 3-bed detached house, and then next to it is the large garden. So the second part of the project was to do another separate planning application to build a similar 3-bed detached house in the garden. So yeah, both parts and phases of those projects were running in parallel, so 2 separate planning applications. The first application to extend the 3-bed into a large 4-bed family home, that went through the planning process super quickly, no problems, and that got approved. But the council weren't so keen on the new build in the garden. So they rejected the first application for the detached house. So this is all happening in 2019, 2020, so last year. And then last summer, after being rejected, I went in for a pre-app. So they rejected me on overdevelopment and overlooking. So I went in with a pre-app for a bungalow, a new build bungalow instead of a house. And they again weren't happy with that. So their proposal and recommendation for the site was to demolish the house and build a pair of semi-detached houses, push back in the site so that it's next to my neighbour, and you can just see my neighbour's house poking out there. So that is fine, and I can understand their thought process because it means that there's more parking space at the front, and it wouldn't impact the neighbour. And I would still have made some profit if I'd gone down that avenue, but it would have been less profit, more risk. And because of the strength of the auction market at the moment, I decided to flip the house back into auction, and I sold it in April this year.
Okay, and we'll do the financials just in a second. So
yeah,
there's a nice sort of photograph of some of the work that was done.
Yeah.
You're looking very, very
all
dressed up, ready to get stuck into the work. So do you enjoy getting into the properties as well, and being part of the actual sort of getting your hands dirty, so to speak? Is that a part of the property investment you enjoy?
Yeah, because I'm conscious that my background is in IT, not in construction. So I want to be involved as much as I can, and just to sort of get stuck in so I can learn. The picture on the left is the house as it was at the beginning. So you can see from the picture on the last page that I've cleared the site and removed all the sheds and everything in the garden. The picture in the middle of me is me helping to clear and empty the house. The digger is the trial holes that we were digging, which was requested by the structural engineer to decide on what foundations I needed for the new build. And then the picture on the far right is the asbestos being removed by approved professionals.
Very good, very good. That's another issue for another day. Asbestos, it's a big one. So so obviously the project, clearly didn't go as well as you had hoped, and I absolutely love your willingness, if you like, to put it out there that this one didn't actually go as you'd hoped. I mean, that is the reality of property. We've all had property deals that did not go as well as we wanted them to go, and I think it's a really good sort of, I don't know if brave is the right word, but you've been very transparent in this, which I think is fantastic, and it's great to be able to sort of learn and follow your journey. So do you want to sort of very high level, there was a predicted, and then obviously there was your actuals in terms of where you ended up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main things to kind of pull out on this sheet is the other costs. So one of my main lessons learned is that I spent too much time and too much money on clearing the site and getting it ready for construction before I'd received all of the planning approvals that I needed. So that other costs, 50k in there, I probably should have been a lot less. I didn't need to pay for the garden to be cleared, or the woodwork and plumbing and furniture and everything to be removed. I should have just held back. So yeah, just a message to everyone, just if possible, just hold back on spending too much money until you've got your planning approved, because it would be potentially money lost. So we can see there that I bought the house for 186 at auction, and then I sold it at auction for 208. So I lost £7,000 overall, which isn't too bad, and it was the right decision. So back to your auction question earlier, it's definitely a seller's market, and I did well, if that's the right phrase. It wasn't
see,
too
Becky,
painful.
I think this is a really good example of you have to deal with the facts as they are. And in a sense, some of the decisions were water under the bridge. You're now in a current situation. I don't know your thought processes per se, but the way I hear it is the auction market was strong. The project wasn't going to lead to a really great result, and your time and money is best spent on something else. So how to find a clean exit, to take the hit now rather than continue with essentially a project that even if you spent another year, at best, you might break even, make a little money, lose a little money. It's like, well, why spend a year of your life on something that's not going anywhere? Just bite that bullet. This is a really important lesson for folks, that you have to keep reassessing the facts as they change. And if there's an exit that you can take the exit.
Yeah, and there was definitely the thought process around the stamp duty holiday ending. At that time, it was the end of March. So I had to made the decision in November. I needed to commit now to getting that into auction for the February auction to try and make the most of the auction market. And yes, I was actively and still am looking at different opportunities and talking to landowners. So my money is better spent on other bigger, stronger projects.
Well, what I think is really interesting about that journey, and yes, everything went well. If it hadn't went well, 124,000 profit, projected, great, brilliant project. The reality is it didn't. Circumstances changed outside your control, and you ended up, rather than making a profit, you've made a slight loss of 7k. People spend way more than £7,000 on courses that are just theory, sitting behind a desk, sitting on a Zoom call. You've effectively, you could say, invested £7,000 in a project, and that experience is worth way more than £7,000. Was the way I would hold it. And there, from that point of view, you've learned a lot. You've had the experience of getting involved with not just on site, but the whole planning process. And there is sometimes a tendency to think it's just the planning is just a penalty kick. Yeah, you buy a property and you fire in planning and you get planning. It can be more complicated than that. There can be issues with local planners, and you do have to know the local planners and know what they're likely to agree to or not agree to as part of your DD on the actual site. So I think that's really good. Just checking to see if any more questions have come in. Someone's asking here, if you developed a 4-bedroom house, what would your GDV have been, and would you've made more? So I suppose just the different choices you had. If you went for a 4-bedroom house, would that have made any difference to the GDV?
Yes, it would have made a difference to the GDV, but I couldn't fit a 4-bedroom house on that site. So the 3-bed was as far as I can push it. So we still need the 1 meter on either side of the property so that they can access the garden. So there was some constraints.
Yeah, on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to just go to the last slide with some of the key lessons learned in summary. But just to remind people, you can go on our platform, you can go to your case study and have a look at this project in detail. Becky's laid the whole journey right out very well. And of course, you then can record your interest in this type of a project. So if you like what you've seen in this project, if you've like the journey that Becky's been on, then you can leave an email address, you can leave an amount that you may be interested in investing if Becky was to bring a similar project to the platform in the future. So just to finish off then, Becky, on your side, you've obviously got a whole bunch of lessons learned in the document, which is great. These are probably the main ones. So you want to just cover these one by one?
Definitely the first one I want to make sure everyone hears about. So you'll notice on the snippet from the title plan, underneath the red box, one of my boundaries is a dashed black line. What that actually means is Land Registry aren't 100% sure where my boundary is. So there's no defining hedgerow, fence, wall, and that is the case. So actually that then made it a hard and more difficult conversation to have with the planners about, is it overdevelopment? Because there's no clarity on exactly where my boundary is. So just keep an eye out for any dashed lines on title plans, and make sure you are 100% solid on what land you're purchasing and what's yours and what isn't.
Okay, you've already mentioned you're stripping out the building and extra work. So communication, I know you've got a story about the Caribbean, and you spent, I think, about 3.5 months in the Caribbean over lockdown. You were sort of made a good decision to get out of the UK, and I used to love sort of tuning into your LinkedIn updates as you're walking along the beach. So what's this story about communication in the Caribbean?
Yeah, so this is actually about a Caribbean trip I did last year. So I spent a lot of time talking to my 2 immediate neighbours, making sure that they knew who I was and updated them on the project. One of the neighbours was more tricky than the other. But what I hadn't taken into consideration, and should have, is keeping the wider community updated about who I am and the project. So just a simple thing of just going and knocking on their door, introducing yourself, maybe having a community session and just getting everyone together. So I had a really nice afternoon on a boat trip in the Caribbean last year, and I was sat next to a couple, and it transpired that they live on this road. So it's completely crazy that I happened to bump into them when I'm on the other side of the world. But as soon as they realised who I was, they pretty much stopped talking to me, and it went very cold and very icy. So it wasn't great, but yeah, I really sort of hit home that I should have gone and introduced myself, and then that sort of icy scenario wouldn't have happened, and maybe they would have been able to support the project.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. And then the subject of planning, obviously it's in the document, so people can go to that and see those. So listen, really appreciate those lessons learned. So appreciate the honesty on that. And again, I just think it's a really good case study for people to dig into. So absolutely fantastic on that. So you'll have a 30-second wrap up just in a few minutes, Becky, so you can be thinking about your final sentence. So just to wrap up the day, our Refer a Friend has actually kicked off very well. It's brilliant to see all these sort of new people joining the platform with this sort of weird code, which of course is the Refer a Friend code that existing members of the platform can get and then pass on to their friends and family, whoever. So literally, if anyone refers someone to the platform, when they invest in a project, then you'll have £50 credited to your e-wallet. And obviously, if you refer 2 people, now you've got £100 to invest in a deal. And on the introducer side, again, we've kicked that off. We're getting paperwork done with a number of introducers. Again, as the people randomly contacting the platform, I don't even know how they've heard about what we're doing, but they're emailing the platform expressing an interest in being an introducer. So again, on this is more for people with sort of bigger ticket investments. But once your cumulative total crosses 10,000, then we will pay you £500 one-off, and then 1% thereafter of whatever your introduced investors invest on the platform. So you can email introducer@leocrowdfunding.com and ask for more details on that. So other exciting news today is that Hightown Lee's Banbury is now view deal. So you can go and click on the view deal, look at the pitch pages, download the offer document, and have a look at this project, which is our next one that will be live for investment. And this is from Hitesh as part of Creation Tech, and he's JVing with Michelle Van Ruyen, and she comes from sort of an interior design background, sort of property experience. So collectively, they're doing this project. It's a single dwelling in Banbury. Full planning is there, senior debt's in place, and they're literally just raising some funds from the platform to kick the project off. So we're doing a project webinar for this for Banbury next Wednesday night. That's the 7th of July, 7 p.m. So you can see the link on the screen. You can snip it, take a quick image capture with your phone or whatever. But you can go and register for our project webinar, and Hitesh and Michelle will be joining us for that. That's next Wednesday, 7 p.m. and you can join us there. And again, you can go to the homepage. You can download the offer document and have a look at the details. This is going to be a 20% per annum ROI, estimated about 7-month project. So it's pretty much in and out relatively quickly. And again, you can leave your email address and record your interest for this project, which helps both us and the fundraiser. And Citygate House Leicester is there to be viewed as well. So you can click on there, download the offer document. And I know the shareholder agreement's just been prepared. I was on a call just this morning at 9:30 with the Citygate House lawyers as we're putting the finishing touches to the shareholder agreement that's about to be sent out. So if that interests you, jump on and have a look. And then John and I will be on Clubhouse at 11 a.m. And I think, Becky, you were able to join us for the first part.
Yep, absolutely.
So Becky's going to join us as well, so we can talk a bit more about the Caribbean and some of your experiences out there in the world of property. And yeah, this is again a sort of a half-hour, 45-minute on Clubhouse. So if you're on Clubhouse, jump on and join in and ask questions, jump on stage. So that is really us for today. So Becky, I'll let you any last minute sort of 30-second wrap-ups, and then John, any key takeaways from Becky's case study. So Becky, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, sure. So I've felt the full force of how long it can take to get a development site through planning. So my focus now is to purchase properties that can make use of the new PD rules, permitted development rules. So just focusing on rows of shops, so retail with uppers and offices and industrial units that we can hopefully turn into flats more quickly in a more streamlined fashion, getting it through planning.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
And I will add one more thing actually. So the tenants, I'm hoping, I'm wanting to buy and hold as many units as possible and lease them to supported living tenants.
Okay, very good, very good. John, so what's your takeaway on the case study? And
I think this case study is really important because one of the things, and this was discussed recently, Antoine put it out there, that do you want to back people who've never had a mistake happen, never had a problem, they've always been 100% successful, or do you want to back someone that has been through the mill, they've already learned their lessons, in fact they learned their lessons on their money or someone else's money, and they're now wiser, smarter, they've got the battle scars, they've been hardened by the process. And I would say this puts Becky in a stronger position to work with investors in the future because she's transparent, she makes mistakes and then fixes them, she finds exits when new facts come along. These are all really positive signs for mature investors, people who have been around, they know that it doesn't always go perfectly, so they want someone who can adapt.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And even after this case study in the journey, Becky's still smiling as part of her smiling company name, and that's above all the most important thing. Of definitely in the times I've met you and been on different Zoom things with you, I just love your attitude to life in general, as well as to the world of property. I think it's really refreshing, and you bring an energy to any sort of Zoom call you're on or any meeting you're in, and I really love that. I think that is reflected in your branding and logo. So listen, thanks very much everyone for joining us today. Again, really enjoyed today. Very, very valuable. Lots of lessons to learn. The recording, of course, will be on our YouTube channel. People can go back, play it back again if you missed some points that were made. And we're back again next Thursday. I've got 2 guests that I'm just waiting on confirmation from. So we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. It'll be in the weekly update. But thanks everyone for joining. Have a really good rest of Thursday, and wish you all the best today, and have a great weekend and every success in business. All the best.
See you live in Clubhouse.
Live in Clubhouse in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Thanks, guys.